You ever imagine that one innocent touch, one shaky breath when someone falls right into your arms, could awaken a forbidden feeling both of you know is wrong, but can't stop? Today on HLOARA, the true story of Ryan and Sophia will keep you glued to the screen. Don't miss it, because that single moment was only the beginning. Ryan Mitchell had no idea that a typical Thursday afternoon would become one of the most perplexing and emotional experiences of his life. However, everything changed the moment he entered his grandmother and Appo's modest Nevada home to assist her in organizing a community fundraiser. There he discovered Sophia Reynolds, his grandmother and Appo's closest friend, sorting boxes with that serene, warm smile that she always carried, the one he tried not to think about too much. Ryan had always thought of Sophia as unique, someone who didn't and Appo's belong in this fast-paced world. She had lovely eyes, a voice that always seemed to be calming whatever pandemonium was going on around her, and a quiet strength. She greeted him with the gentle giggle he had gotten accustomed to hearing over the years, and he greeted her gently but warmly in response. He and Sophia were left alone in the living room when his grandma went outside to answer a phone call. The atmosphere felt familiar, even reassuring. As they sorted decorations, Sophia joked that she wasn't an Appo's very good at arts and crafts while the afternoon sunlight poured through the drapes, turning the space golden. Ryan chuckled as he bent to pick up a dropped ribbon. Suddenly, he heard the sharp sound of cloth sliding across carpet, and he looked up in time to see her foot twist on the edge of a loose rug. Sophia just gasped instead of screaming, but the sound went right through him. Without thinking, he moved forward and grabbed her by the arms before she could fall. He moved forward, grabbing her by the arms before she could collapse as her knees gave way and her breath faltered. He swiftly directed her against the wall to prevent her from falling as she gasped in shock and her knees faltered. He held her firmly but gently to prevent her from losing her balance. End quote. Don and Appo's, worry I and Appo's, we got you, end quote, he said, trying to sound more composed than he actually was. Sophia winced slightly as she attempted to put weight on her foot. End quote, wait, I can't, and Appo's move yet, end quote, she muttered. Suddenly, the situation seemed much more intimate and quiet, as if the outside world had vanished, and they were the only ones left in that tiny room. Ryan realized how much he wanted to keep her safe, and how much she depended on him. Even though she nodded, he could sense the tightness in her body, a mixture of agony and worry from being caught at such an unexpectedly near moment. As he continued to reassure her and tell her she was okay, she muttered that she didn't and Appo's want to bother him and that she didn't and Appo's enjoy being a burden, but he repeatedly assured her that she wasn't and Appo's and expressed his gratitude for being there to catch her. Her ankle was still too weak as he felt her slowly attempt to shift once again. With a wince, she automatically stretched out and gently grasped his shirt for support. His heartbeat quickened at that tiny unintentional push because it was a genuine, honest moment of wanting assistance, something he had never before allowed himself to feel so intensely. Ryan noted the subtle vanilla aroma in her hair, but he was only concerned about keeping her steady and safe since she was trapped in that moment and fully trusted him. She nodded once again, fully believing him, when he advised them to proceed carefully and offered to assist her to the couch if she so desired. With his hand still steady on her back and her still clutching his arm, he led her cautiously, step by step, and that tiny connection felt heavier than he had anticipated, like something he didn't and Appo's want to let go of too soon. She trembled slightly with each step she made, and each time she recoiled, he stopped, waited calmly, and gently spoke to her to calm her down. When she informed him that she detested situations like these and felt weak, he shook his head and told her that anyone could twist an ankle. That made her laugh a little, but it was a wobbly chuckle, and she thanked him once more in a loving but tight voice. When they eventually arrived at the sofa and he assisted her in sitting, she took a slow breath, her relief evident on her face. However, as he was about to inquire as to whether she needed ice or water, the front door opened, and his grandmother returned inside, beaming with joy and totally oblivious to what had just transpired. In an attempt to conceal the agitated expression on her face, Sophia swiftly released Ryan and Appo's arm and straightened her top and hair. Meanwhile, Ryan took a step back, his heartbeat continuing to beat more quickly than it should have. His grandma came running over, worried but composed, and Ryan gave a brief account of what had transpired, Trying not to show how unexpectedly emotional the situation had felt, Sophia continued to swear that everything was all right. But when she attempted to correct her foot, she winced once more, and Ryan spotted it right away. In addition to pulling out a little first aid kit and offering guidance throughout, his grandmother insisted on binding Sophia and Appo's ankle. With a hesitant, uncertain expression that Ryan wasn't Appo's used to seeing on her, Sophia sat quietly, appreciative yet a little ashamed. The room was quiet as his grandmother went outside once more to retrieve ice from the neighbor and Appo's freezer. Ryan looked at Sophia, and at last she turned to face him, her eyes gentle and full of something unsaid, a mixture of emotional weight and thankfulness. She said, "Thank you for catching me," in a softer, deeper, more meaningful voice. Something about the moment remained warm and heavy in Ryan and Appo's chest, so he nodded, not trusting himself to say anything more. She continued to hold his gaze for a second, and he sensed something there that he didn't and Appo's fully comprehend yet. It was as though the moment they spent together against the wall had subtly altered something between them, and even though neither of them knew how to deal with it, they both knew it wouldn't and Appo's go away. Though Ryan had never acknowledged it to himself, there was something about Sophia Reynolds that always made him pause for a moment longer than he should have. There was something warm and steady about the way she moved through the world, as if she had learned long ago how to carry both joy and sadness without letting either break her. Sophia Reynolds always been a part of Ryan and Appo's memories, tucked away at the edge of family get-togethers, community events, and holiday dinners where she helped his grandmother with everything from setting chairs to baking enough pies for a small army. Although she was just somewhat older than him, perhaps in her mid-40s or 45 at most, she exuded a kind of contemplative grace that felt more like experience than age. He had thought of her as just one of his grandmother and Appo's closest friends when he was younger, someone who was considerate enough to remember his birthday and inquire about his work, someone who offered gentle counsel without sounding like she was lecturing. However, as he stood in the living room after helping her sit down and saw her ankle carefully wrapped with a loose bandage, he realized that he had been acting as though he hadn't Appo's noticed her for years. The most peculiar thing was that she had always treated him with warmth and sincerity, but today felt different. Though she had shown a side of herself to him today, she tried not to seem embarrassed as she sat on the couch, breathing gently through the waning pain in her ankle, but he could tell by the faint crimson in her cheeks that she was still reliving the moment he had caught her. Ryan couldn't and Appo's help but notice how her eyes softened every time she looked at him, as if was appreciative in a way she couldn't and Appo's quite put into words. She pushed stray hair behind her ear and attempted a tiny grin. Sophia attempted to laugh at the worrying, claiming it wasn't Appo's as severe as it appeared, but Ryan could feel the tightness in her face, the residual dread from the fall, while his grandmother, busy in the kitchen once more, barked out instructions about elevating the foot and drinking water. She apologized once more for causing trouble, and he shook his head, telling her that she had been helping long before he arrived and that she had never caused trouble. She grinned broadly, one of those soft smiles that warmed the space. The silence between them became longer and deeper as his grandmother departed once more to find a better ankle bandage. Glancing down at her hands, Sophia gently twisted her fingers as though attempting to collect her thoughts. At last she replied "I didn't and Appo's mean to scare you earlier, I just wasn't and Appo's expecting that to happen." Ryan assured her that his sole concern was that she might be wounded, not that he was afraid. After that, she gazed at him for a considerable amount of time, her eyes displaying a mixture of gratitude and something he was unable to identify. He wanted to move closer because of the tenderness in her face, but he refrained out of fear of stepping over a boundary he didn't and Appo's fully comprehend. Rather, he took a seat in the chair across from her, and leaned forward slightly to indicate that he was there and paying attention. She thanked him once more slowly and deeply this time, as if she wanted him to understand that the words weren't and Appo's casual. She was frustrated by situations like these because she detested relying on other people rather than the discomfort. After years of managing too many things on her own, she claimed to have learned how to take care of herself. The way she said it conveyed a quiet ache that changed Ryan and Appo's perception of her and made him understand that she had more inner strength than most people understood. She grinned again, this time with a trace of melancholy, as he informed her that it was acceptable to rely on someone periodically, and that even the strongest individuals needed it. She expressed her admiration for his close relationship with his grandmother, and his willingness to lend a hand without being asked. She claimed that his benevolence mattered more than people realized, even if he dismissed it as insignificant. After then there was a more subdued silence in the room, the kind that seemed cozy, like two people sitting in a shared pause. Ryan took note of the small details, such as how Sophia kept fiddling with the blanket on her lap even though everything was fine, how her breathing had stabilized but her cheeks were still a shy pink, and how she kept glancing at him before quickly averting her gaze as if she wasn't sure what she was permitted to feel. He pondered whether she experienced the same peculiar attraction he did. This sudden awareness that had begun the instant he caught her and seemed to intensify each time their gazes locked. He was unsure of how to handle the emotion. He didn't want to misinterpret the situation or cause awkwardness for Sophia or his grandma, but he couldn't help but notice how his chest warmed up whenever she spoke gently or how his thoughts kept returning to her despite his best efforts to divert his attention. At last, Sophia broke the stillness by informing him that she had always assumed he would eventually go far away, perhaps to a large city like Seattle or Chicago, and she sounded shocked that he still resided close by. End quote. Life didn't pull me as far as I once thought it would, end quote, Ryan said with a gentle giggle. She nodded as if she knew that better than she revealed. She acknowledged that she felt at home in the area due of people like his grandma, who provided stability to her life. Her voice was hardly audible above a whisper as she paused before continuing, end quote, and people like you. End quote. At those words, Ryan experienced a subtle but unmistakable shift in himself. She looked down quickly, almost shyly, and he didn't want to push her when he wanted to inquire what she meant. Rather, he extended his hand to adjust the pillow beneath her damaged foot. When his hand unintentionally touched hers, she froze for a little moment, not out of terror but rather something akin to surprise. She then relaxed and gave him a faint, appreciative grin that caused his heartbeat to falter once again. A moment later, his grandmother came back with a better wrap and a lecture about relaxing for the remainder of the day. Ryan sat next to them, attempting to calm his racing thoughts, while Sophia listened courteously and nodded. Ryan was suddenly reminded of how long Sophia had been a part of their world and how familiar she had always felt when his grandma told her that she was family, despite Sophia and Appo's insistence that she didn't want to cause any trouble. Ryan noticed Sophia staring at him once more while his grandma wrapped Sophia and Appo's ankle. Her face was softer than before, almost thankful in a manner that felt intimate. Sophia let out a long breath and lowered her shoulders back into the sofa as his grandmother went outside again to answer the ringing. When Ryan gently inquired about her well-being, she nodded and said, end quote, I and I'm just thinking today didn't go the way I planned, end quote. He answered, end quote, me neither, end quote, and she looked at him with a more profound understanding because of the way he said it. She muttered that these kinds of times made life feel weird, how a little thing might alter the course of a day, and how intimacy could come out of the blue. Ryan merely nodded, hoping she could see what he couldn't say aloud since he didn't know how to respond without giving away too much. Even though they didn't touch, their connection felt powerful enough to overcome the distance during their final silent moment together, which was long and warm and full of unsaid words and tentative hope. When his grandma called for Ryan from the kitchen, Sophia eventually averted her gaze. However, before he got up, Sophia said, almost too gently, end quote, thank you again for being there. End quote. When he gazed into her eyes, he realized that their previous moment would live on in both of their memories. After a few minutes, Sophia attempted to stand by herself once more, insisting that she didn't want to distract everyone with her mishap. However, as soon as her foot touched the ground, a sharp tremble went through her ankle, and before Ryan could even think, she instinctively reached out and grasped Ryan and Appo's arm for support. He intervened right away, carefully moving her back so she wouldn't lose her footing while she grimaced and muttered a quiet, trembling, end quote, wait, my ankle, end quote. Despite her ashamed expression, Sophia accepted his assistance. She briefly relied on him for support when she felt another sharp ache. There was a lot of quiet emotion in the air, but Ryan and Apos' only concern was making sure she was secure and at ease. She tried to lighten the situation by whispering and quote, "I and Apos am really not usually this clumsy," end quote, but her voice wavered with a mixture of hurt and something deeper she wasn't Apos ready to articulate. Ryan felt something soften within of him, an unexpected natural protectiveness. He assured her that it wasn't Apos at all awkward, that anyone could have made a mistake, and that he was happy to be there to catch her. She chuckled a little shyly at that, but as she forced herself to breathe through the pain, her hand moved back to his arm for support. He moved cautiously so she didn't Apos feel hurried or under pressure, guiding her slowly toward the closest chair while keeping an eye on every breath and quiver to make sure she felt secure. As they proceeded, Sophia leaned on him, her hand steadily gripping his arm, her strides deliberate and short, her gaze fixed on the ground as though she had entire faith in him rather than her own legs. She hesitated before taking a seat when they got to the chair, as if she didn't Apos want the moment to stop, and there was something reassuring about being held by someone she didn't Apos typically let herself depend on. She gazed up at him with a look of gentle appreciation and something more delicate, something she might not have displayed if life hadn't Apos compelled her to be in his arms. She let out a long breath and her shoulders relaxed for the first time since the fall as Ryan carefully put her onto the chair and adjusted the cushion to prevent straining her ankle. He started to pull away, but she stopped him with a gentle grip on his wrist. Her eyes flicked up to his with a gentle intensity that startled them both. She thanked Ryan once more, but this time her voice was more sensitive and deep, expressing feelings she had been suppressing all day. He nodded, at a loss for words, and they just stared at each other for a moment, long enough for the room to become quiet and intimate. The moment was so consoling that neither of them wanted to move, yet it also felt brittle, as if it may shatter if either of them inhaled too deeply. When she heard his grandmother and Apos' footsteps in the corridor, she reluctantly released her hold on his wrist, and Ryan took a quick step back to blend in with courteous chatter and worried inquiries about swelling and ice packs. As his grandma cared over her ankle, Sophia attempted to sit up straight so she wouldn't Apos appear to be in need of assistance, but occasionally her gaze strayed to Ryan and she noticed that he was observing her with a gentleness she hadn't Apos anticipated. The silence returned as his grandma left the room once more, but it was heavier this time, full of residual intimacy that neither of them could deal with. Gently clearing her throat, Sophia expressed her embarrassment at almost toppling him. Ryan shook his head, telling her he didn't Apos mind at all and was only relieved she was all right. She grinned at that little shy genuine, and Ryan had the same weird pull once more. Something warm and foreign that had been intensifying since he first saw her. Whispering that she wasn't Apos used to being taken care of and that she generally managed everything on her own, she rubbed her hands together as though attempting to relax herself. Without thinking, Ryan took a step closer and told her that she didn't Apos have to deal with anything on her own today because he was there and ready to assist. She nodded slowly, allowing his words to fill the void between them while her eyes softened in a way that made her appear younger, almost optimistic. She confessed that she detested being vulnerable because it made her feel exposed. Ryan gently reassured her that being vulnerable didn't Apos make one weak. Rather, it just made one human. This seemed to stick with her, lingering in the air as she gazed at him with a warmth she was no longer hiding. Ryan felt the sincerity of her words sink into his chest as she said that she didn't Apos know how she would have survived the situation without him. The moment broke again when his grandma returned with an ice pack, but this time there was still something unsaid between them that neither of them claimed not to feel. Ryan kept a close eye on Sophia and Apos' face as his grandma bandaged her ankle, and she thanked her courteously, noting how she attempted to appear composed despite the fact that her feelings were still evident. Sophia let out a gentle breath and gave Ryan a little grin that was more meaningful than anything she said when his grandmother went outside to answer the door once more. After Sophia and Apos' ankle was wrapped and carefully propped on a pillow, Ryan remained close by, pretending to straighten boxes and tidy loose decorations, but in reality, he kept glancing toward her, unable to stop himself from checking if she was still in pain or if she needed anything. Each time their eyes met, she quickly looked down, as if she didn't Apos know how to handle the quiet connection growing between them. she whispered, and quote, today surprised me, end quote, to which Ryan nodded gently. His grandmother insisted Sophia rest until she felt strong enough to stand, then bustled out to greet a neighbor at the door, leaving the two of them alone again in a room filled with warm afternoon light and soft silence that made every tiny sound feel heavier. Sophia sat with her hands in her lap, fingers nervously brushing against one another, 1,000 unspoken thoughts flickering across her face. She finally lifted her eyes and said quietly, I didn't oppose. Mean to cause so much trouble today, and Ryan shook his head instantly, telling her she didn't oppose. Cause trouble at all, telling her he was glad he and oppose. Been there, telling her he would have done the exact same thing for anyone he cared about. She paused at that last word, cared, and something in her expression softened, as if the word had landed somewhere deep inside her. She admitted she felt silly for falling, silly for leaning on him, silly for letting him see her in a moment of weakness she rarely showed anyone. Ryan sat on the edge of the coffee table in front of her so she didn't oppose. Have to turn her head, and he told her gently that everyone had vulnerable moments, that hers didn't oppose. Make her any less strong that she didn't oppose. Have to carry everything alone all the time. She looked at him with a mix of gratitude and disbelief, as if no one had said something like that to her in years. Her voice lowered when she said, I and oppose. Am not used to people noticing things about me. And Ryan found himself leaning slightly closer, speaking softly as he told her he noticed more than she thought, that he had always seen how much she did for his grandmother in the community, how quietly she supported everyone without ever asking for anything in return. She blinked fast, her eyes turning shiny for a moment before she looked down at her hands again, whispering, that and oppose. Kind of you to say. Ryan didn't oppose. Push her to meet his eyes. He just stayed near, giving her space while letting her know he wasn't oppose. Going anywhere. The room stayed warm and gentle, filled with a calm that felt like it belonged only to them. After a moment, Sophia quietly admitted that she had been feeling lonely lately, not because she didn't oppose have friends, but because she often felt like she was living life in the background, always helping, rarely being helped. Ryan listened carefully, his expression soft, and he told her that she didn't oppose. Deserved to be in the background, that she had more presence, kindness and strength than most people he knew. She smiled at that. A real slow smile that made her look both beautiful and vulnerable in a way Ryan wasn't oppose. Expecting, she said, you and oppose. Too sweet, but the way she said it felt like she meant something deeper. Ryan shrugged lightly, saying he was only being honest, and that made her laugh softly, the first relaxed sound she and oppose made since the fall. When she looked at him again, there was a new warmth in her eyes, something gentle and searching. She said, today felt strange but not in a bad way. Ryan nodded, agreeing quietly, telling her he felt the same, telling her he hadn't oppose. Expected the day to shift the way it had, but he didn't oppose. Regret any moment of it. She held his gaze longer this time, and the air between them grew thick with something unspoken, something that felt like hope mixed with fear, something fragile yet steady. She started to say something. Ryan saw her inhale softly, as if she was gathering courage. But before the words came, his grandmother shouted from the porch, breaking the moment like a soft crack across the air. Sophia looked away quickly, trying to hide the warmth in her face, and Ryan stood up slowly, not wanting to move but knowing he had to answer. He asked gently if she needed anything before he went to help his grandmother, and she shook her head, giving him a small smile that carried a quiet message he couldn't oppose. Fully read yet. He walked toward the door, but before he stepped out, he glanced back one more time. Sophia was watching him with an expression she didn't oppose. Hide fast enough, something thoughtful, something tender, something that looked suspiciously like a feeling she wasn't oppose. Ready to speak aloud. When their eyes met again, she didn't oppose. Look away this time. She just gave him a soft, grateful smile that said everything she didn't oppose. Have the courage to say yet. Ryan left the room with his heart beating a little too fast, and Sophia exhaled shakily, touching her chest as if she was trying to steady the sudden rush of emotion she didn't oppose. Expect, they both knew the wasn't oppose. Finished that something had started quietly between them, something that felt too real to ignore, and though neither of them said a word about it, both carried the same thought. Today had changed something, and whatever it was only the beginning.